everyone. I am Allison Maklick. I'm the director of pre-sales at Ontic, and that's where I had the delight of meeting our presenter today, Miss Megan Hurley. So, a couple things about Megan. She has been in tech since 2013. She has done SDR director specific work since 2017. Fun fact, we both worked at Sprinkler together, but we didn't know each other, but we were there around the same time. And then she worked at Circle, which is doing big things right now. And most recently, we got to work together again at Ontic, where she has been our SDR director. And she is incredible. I will let everyone know that I have got to experience Megan's presentation at Ontic, and I have put in place what she taught us. And this was over a year ago. And I still remember and I still do her tactics on LinkedIn. Y'all, she's incredible. I am so excited to introduce you today. So, my friend, my talented and brilliant friend, Megan, I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I really appreciate that very nice introduction. And thank you all so much for having me today. I'm really excited to present this session to you on really just making the most of LinkedIn, some strategies on your profile. We're going to spend a lot of time on the actual profile and showing you how to optimize the different sections, talking a little bit about what each one is for. And then we'll wrap up at the end with a touch on social selling and just what that really means when it comes to building your personal brand and using LinkedIn to maximize your presence. The content of this presentation will be shared with y'all or made available to y'all. Feel free to take notes throughout so that way you can really put these practices into place in your own profile after the call. You can feel free to go through it with me and within your own profile just to make sure you can access all the sections. But this really putting the time into it takes about, I would say, like 2 to 3 hours total just to really go in and update each one of the sections. So, and also, of course, please feel free to ask questions in the chat as we go along. Wendy's going to help make sure that I don't miss anything. So when you do go in and decide to make these updates, really, really important that, or if you're going to make some changes now, feel free to do this now. You don't want to blow up your whole network. I'm sure you've seen updates, so-and-so started a new job, so-and-so has added some skills. If you're going to be making large changes to your profile, your whole network doesn't need to know about it. And it might be a potential red flag to your existing employer. Even if you say, hey, I'm just building my brand, you just want to make sure that you follow these steps to make sure that you're not blowing everybody up. Okay, so we're going to talk about your profile. So, some tips on creating a stellar profile, and I'm going to reference my personal LinkedIn profile frequently throughout this. I'll be popping in and out of the presentation and into my actual LinkedIn platform just to show you this in the wild. But some tips and tricks on doing this. It's really important that you're consistent and easy to find across all of your platforms. If you have a pretty common name, use your middle initial to help yourself stand out. And you can see in my personal URL here, I don't use my middle initial, but it's just because my mom decided to use every single possible letter in spelling my first name. So I am unique in that way. But definitely personalize your URL. You can do this within LinkedIn, and it changes it from having a URL that is just a bunch of letters and numbers to something that is much more easily findable like this. So LinkedIn, like all other sites, at its heart is a search engine. So this is what we're optimizing for, is just maximizing LinkedIn's search engine to make sure that you're easily found by potential clients, by potential employers, so you can connect with your colleagues, so you can really make an impact and learn from your network. So when you're thinking about your actual headline, think about it from an SEO lens. Now, I'm sure a lot of you, maybe you do this on your LinkedIn profile today. Maybe you see it on a lot of folks' LinkedIn profiles. They use this section, and I'm talking about this section here right below my name. They use that section as opportunity to write paragraphs about themselves, but that's not going to get you this SEO optimization that you're really looking for. So think about using descriptive words that are related to your role, related the problems that you solve, and related to what you want the purpose of your profile to be. Do you want your profile to be a place that you establish yourself as a subject matter expert for the prospects that you're demoing for the clients that you're interacting with? Do you want it to be more of a personal brand where you're talking more about solutions consultant related topics and sharing thought leadership there in trying to grow your brand and grow your credibility within your field of expertise? You want to definitely avoid sentences, and I know this is hard, especially in that section, but don't worry, there are other parts of your profile where it is appropriate to write paragraphs, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. And yeah, so you can see when within my profile, I am focused on sales development, but I'm also wanting to kind of expand that beyond just, hey, I go out and I prospect and I find people and I set meetings. I also focus on driving decisions with data. That's something that I'm very, very passionate about. I also am a big believer in sales enablement, so I have a lot of experience with that, and that may not come across always just in the title. So this is step one, how you make yourself stand out. And then of course, if you think about your profile picture, you want to make sure it's a clear picture of just you. It's very professional. And when it comes to your cover photo, you have a few different options here. Currently, I have mine set as Austin, the Austin skyline, because I am from Austin, Texas. So that's a big part of my professional and my personal identity. In the past, I've used employer branded backgrounds. There is a chance that your employer has a social library where they will have different headers available that you can pull in for your cover photo like this. So whatever you want the goal of your profile to be. Okay, so now there are a couple sections of this about section that you can optimize even further. So we're going to talk about adding profile sections and adding custom buttons. So at the bare minimum, you want to have all of these core sections filled out. So I'm going to pop out here and actually click the button. So within the profile section, there's a lot of different options that you have here. So again, at the minimum, you want to have all of these core sections filled out, your education, your current position, services that you provide, if you've had career breaks, and definitely skills. Skills are something that you can add throughout all of your profile. You can add them into your main about section. You can add them into each one of your roles that you've held. I recommend adding them as many places as possible because again, you're wanting to optimize the SEO that LinkedIn provides. And people can also endorse you for skills. So you can add skills yourself. A lot of people don't do that. They wait for the endorsements, but don't wait. Go ahead and make this a real shout out of who you are as a professional. And then you've got these other sections here, which are not required but highly encouraged to fill out. So you can have a featured section, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. You can add various licenses and certificates, this and certifications, and this is not just limited to your degrees that you got from school. Think about all of the certifications that you've earned from your current and previous employers. Those are worth listing. So having that in there, that is another thing that really showcases you as a professional and expert. Yes, Wendy.
We have a question from Kelly asking about, is this different from the education section that we already have on there?
Yeah, so the education section is going to be part of the core here. So when you go into add education, this is where you can add your individual sections. And so yes, the certifications, that is separate. Good question. And then of course, projects that you've worked on, courses, recommendations that you get from other folks. I'll show that to you in a second as well. And then additional. So this is where you can really make your personality shine. So much of LinkedIn is about your professional identity, but there is an opportunity for you to bring a little bit more of your personal life into it. And when you think about what LinkedIn is used for, it's a professional connection platform. So not only are we connecting on shared expertise, but we're also connecting on shared experience. experiences. So you can list organizations that you've been a part of, any honors and awards that you've received that may not fit naturally into other sections, and really anything that you want to showcase. Yeah, another question from the chat.
Yeah, it was a clarifying additional question. If we already have that on our profile, like one of these sections, do we need to add it? Do we need to go in here to add it again? Or is this only adding sections we don't already have?
No, when you add a section in here, that's a good question. When you add the section in here, it pulls into the appropriate part of the profile. So this won't be adding to your about section. This is just kind of like a centralized place that LinkedIn has provided to make these updates. They are constantly updating the platform and the UI on the platform. So this may be different from when you originally set up your LinkedIn profile and then you had to like kind of go into the individual sections. This is more of like an overarching place for you to put all of that in. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so that's the profile section. Um, and then you'll also notice that you have an add custom button. This is kind of it's not like a brand new feature that LinkedIn has, but it is definitely a newer feature and one that can make it easier for folks to connect with you. So if you want to make yourself available to other colleagues in the industry just to connect and have thought leadership, or even if you want to make your available to prospects and clients that you're talking to, you have a lot of different options here. The book an appointment is the most popular option. And in the appendix of this deck, there's instructions on how to link LinkedIn together with your Google Calendar, so that way it can look at your availability. And then when people are interacting with you on LinkedIn, they can just click that book an appointment button right on your profile, or it also pops up in direct messages that you send to folks, and then they can have access to your calendar and put time on directly. But there are other options on here as well. So if you're a creator, if you have an Etsy store and you want to showcase that, you can certainly list that here. If you have a portfolio or work or website that you're proud of, if you have a blog or a newsletter. So it's really just a URL. So really anything that you can put in there, you can make into kind of like a call to action button. So that's just another way to drive eyes and drive people to the things that you want to showcase. Wendy, was there another question?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
Apologies. Oh,
No
yes.
worries.
Sorry. There is a question. I had the same question. That's what from Diane has the question. Is the add custom button only available with LinkedIn Premium? Sorry, Diane. I was clicking and looking for the same thing.
You know, it may be, if you're not seeing it on your profile, that yes, that may be something that is only available part of LinkedIn Premium. That is something that you can get yourself, or is usually offered through employers, especially if they have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn Sales Navigator as well. It is a valuable tool. So a lot of your sales partners who are part of like the GTM sales team, they may have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but there is value in kind of spreading it out into all customer facing aspects of the organization. So, you know, it might be something worth making a play for as well. All right, I'm going to pop back over to the deck here and move on to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about the actual about section. So this is below your description, and this is where you can really get into the meat of what you want to talk about. So here we have listed some best practices for the about section, and then I'll move over and show it to you in action. But you want to keep it to 2,000 characters or less. So again, you get a lot of flexibility there. Bullets are best because you really want to think about like, hey, when you pull up that about section, how is it going to present? You don't want to just have blocks and blocks of text in, you know, either one paragraph or even several paragraphs. You want to make it easy for somebody to kind of understand who you are and what you bring to the table in just a glance. This should be written in first person because it is your profile and you are talking about yourself, and talk about your current role and your current focus. And then the last one is really important actually, because you want to make sure that you're keeping the formatting the same. So putting it into a Google Doc or a Word doc and then copy and pasting that over into LinkedIn is a definite best practice. So here is what that kind of looks like in practice. So I don't expect you all to read my full about section, but you can kind of get the gist of how that looks like. But again, so starting off with just kind of like a general overview of who I am and what I'm about, and then kind of going into those bullet points of what I really want to make sure stands out to both my prospects, the current clients I work with, and to potential future employers. So it's a very one of the most important parts of your profile for sure. And then we have the featured section. So we showed you how to add those in the add the profile sections. So within the featured section, this is where you want to post content. You can post photos. So thinking about if you have any photos of your current team or from recent events that you've had together as a company, that can also be part of this featured section. If you are so lucky to be featured in articles or in podcasts, this is a great place to show that as well. So this is what that kind of looks like when you're actually in your profile. And in a moment, I'll kind of go through and scroll my actual profile and show you how this all kind of plays out in the formatting. But I've been on a couple podcasts. You should say yes to podcasts if people are reaching out to you on LinkedIn and asking you to be a guest, even if it's a sales tactic to try to get you to talk to them as a vendor. Put yourself out there, and it's not always super comfortable. Or if you have the opportunity to be featured on your company's newsletter, or really any place that you can get your personal brand out there, and have an opportunity to have content to feature on your profile, definitely do it. I know it's not always the most comfortable thing to do, but the more you do it, the easier that it'll get. And then, at some point you may even purchase a podcast mic and then be like, who am I? Which is 100% what happened to me. But so there's a couple examples there. And then we also have the experience section. So your experience section is where you have your actual individual roles listed out. So LinkedIn makes it possible for you in this experience section to not only list the role that you hold at your current position or your most recently held role, but you can actually break it down and go through each one of your the roles that you've held. That's a great way, especially if you made a lot of progression, if you spent a lot of time in a company, to really call it out and talk about each role that you did, and then give, like this says, 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 sentences, 3 to 4 bullets on what you actually did and the impact that you made in that role. Some best practices here: 100 characters per experience line, 2,000 characters max per experience description. And then you can also do something similar here and take these featured articles and attach them to specific roles that you've held if this was during a certain time period. Like you can see this one here references the time that I spent at Circle. So I not only want to have this in my featured section, but I also want to have this specifically under my experience at Circle. So going over here to the actual profile, you can see what it looks like in action. So here's the about section in depth that we went through. Here's the main featured section. There's an activity section here as well. The only way you can influence this is by actually posting content, and we'll talk about that when we get into the social selling section. But then here's the experience section that we just talked about. So you can see with each one of my experiences, I have bullet points that focus on accomplishments, at the places that I have spent more time. I have all of my individual roles listed, and just to kind of, and then again, just to remind you all, when we talked about skills, this is where you can pull skills into each individual role because they're not all the same, right? The work that I did at Ontic is different than the work that I did at Circle, is different than the work that I did at Sprinkler. And so you want to be able to not only list that, but then of course also be able to speak to it, should that come up in conversation. So that's that so far. Any questions? I don't see anything, but just want to make sure before we go into the next section. All right. Oh, sorry, I did have the experience listed there. Okay, so we've talked about kind of the basics of the profile. Now let's talk about some of the less discussed profile. These are often the ones that once you've gotten those main aspects set up, you're like, oh, I don't really know if this is all worth it. So let's dive a little more deeply into skills. So we saw how you could pull them into each one of your individual roles. There are a lot of skills available on LinkedIn, and you won't know what's there until you actually go in and search for them. So you can put up to 50 skills, and then you, like I said, you can attach the individual skills to your experience. They don't have to be limited to the role that you are specifically in. Really think expansively about the skills that you want to add. Think about what you bring to the table. Are you a great executor? Are you a great strategist? Do you do well in team settings? Are you more comfortable in more of like an individual contribution role? There are skills attached to all of it. You can spend much more time here than you actually think you would actually need to spend once you start thinking really critically about each role that you've held and how you want to advertise yourself for it. And then finally, we have the recommendation section. This is going to feel uncomfortable, but this is one of the most important things that you can do for your profile. This is where you go in and actually ask people that you have worked with, even either currently or in the past, to write a recommendation about your experience. And again, that does not sound comfortable to most people, but people are happy to do it. I have never asked somebody for a recommendation and had them say no, because you know who's going to write you the best recommendation. So you definitely know who to ask. And I'll tell you, out of all of the recommendations that I've ever gotten, I've only gotten one unprompted, and that was like just this week, and I was floored because it's literally never happened before. But the flip side of this, you can give recommendations. So if you've got a colleague, past or present, that you've really appreciated working with, and you want to get a recommendation from them, it can make that a little bit easier if you're like, hey, I really like to beef up my LinkedIn profile. I'd love to write you a recommendation. Was wondering if you'd be willing to do the same. That can make that a little bit easier to actually go through. And then finally, there's the volunteer section. And this is a great section to showcase your personality. This is where you can pull in things that don't typically align with your role. So I'll show you as an example on my profile, kind of what I get into. So here's that education section that we talked about earlier. You can see they've actually moved it way far down the profile. It used to be right at the top, but thankfully, the further you get away from college, the less that matters. Here's the licenses and certification section. Here's the actual skills, right? So you can see the skills that I've pulled in myself. You can see where you've been endorsed by other folks for those skills, and actually adding those skills in makes it easier for people to endorse you. And then here's the recommendation section. So you can see recommendations that you've gotten and then recommendations that you've given. See, I'm way better at giving recommendations than I am for asking for them just from the number, but there's a solid base there. And this is awesome. It's a great place for people to go. And, you think about like when you're finding a new restaurant and you go to the Yelp profile versus their website, because the website is what they have to say about themselves, but Yelp is what other people say about them. And when it comes to working with you, either if it's a potential client or a potential employer, people really care about what other people have to say. So there's the recommendations in action, and here's the organizations. So this is organizations and volunteer work. It'll all kind of pull into the same place, but you can see like my music fraternity that I was part of in college, not necessarily directly related to sales development work, but something I want to talk about. And I obviously am very proud of my work in the National Karaoke League, which if you want to learn more about it, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk about karaoke all day long. Cool. So, final tips before we jump into the section that we're going to focus a little bit on social selling. So remember, at the end of the day, LinkedIn is a search engine, so you are maximizing for SEO. So adding links, doing all of those things that you know or may not know. This may be new information to you, in which case, happy to share it. But adding links into all of these sections really makes that SEO happen for you. And then also making each section as content heavy as possible also maximizes that SEO. Making sure that you're adding actual logos into your experience section versus just listing it. If you search on LinkedIn for each one of your employers, the official branded logos should pop up as long as it's a pretty well established company and they have their own LinkedIn page. So just connecting everything and really making sure like, oh, I'm just not just listing my employer, I'm actually making sure it's connected to the right page. It's another thing that will maximize that SEO. And then what is the platform actually meant for? So we've created the base of it. We've got everything maximized for SEO, but then you actually have to get into that community. So adding connections weekly is a great way to do that. You must have a minimum of 500 connections on LinkedIn. If you don't have 500 connections on LinkedIn, that should be like number one priority is connecting with everybody within your company, connecting with everybody that you've gone to school with, that you have worked with past. The reason for that is if you have less than 500 connections, LinkedIn lists exactly how many you have. If you have more than 500 connections, it's just 500 plus connections on the profile. And it just shows that you have an established network. If you have less than 500, your profile can be viewed as a little bit more junior than you probably want to be viewed as. We talked about professional profile photos being a must, so clear photo of your face, nothing too crazy, nothing from a wedding where you've kind of like cut somebody out or any other photos where you've needed to cut somebody out. And then a background photo that represents you, who you are, or your company or your current role. So those are just the last minute tips and tricks. And then we're going to focus a little bit more on social selling. So I know when people think about social selling, probably the first thing that comes to your mind, especially if you're in a role where you tend to get approached by vendors, you think that social selling is that pitch that you get in your inbox immediately after sending a connection request. Oh, sorry. Yes, Wendy, is there a question?
Yes. What the question is from Kelly. What are your thoughts on accepting random LinkedIn requests from people you don't know? I often get requests from people that I have absolutely no idea who they are.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you are looking at the requests, getting those blind connection requests, those are always a risk. So I like to get as much information as I can from their own kind of headline and about section. Because if it's a vendor that's going to be clearly somebody that's looking to sell to me, that connection might not be as valuable. But if it's somebody who's another SDR leader in the community, I would be more willing to accept that connection request. So when you're thinking about who you're accepting, you're thinking about the type of experience that you personally want to curate for yourself on LinkedIn, because every connection request that you accept, you then become available to that person through DM, but you also become subject to the content that they're going to share on their LinkedIn page. So you just want to make sure, like, hey, is this going to be a valuable connection for me? And if it's not, you can also provide that feedback to LinkedIn and they'll ask you like why you're not accepting the connection request. And you can just say, I don't know this person. But that being said, there is value in accepting from strangers if they are somebody that you think can add to your network and what you'll be gaining from their content. Um, so these steps here are the basic steps for engaging on LinkedIn. You want to follow your company, follow all employees that you can find of the company from the CEO down to the interns. You should be connected with all of them just to really help create that network because when you do go out to engage with your network, when you do share content, those are going to be the people that are most likely to engage with you. And then every time they engage with you, that amplifies your content out in front of more eyes. It gets it in front of their network as well. If you think to your LinkedIn feed, you can see not only the shares from your direct connection, but you can also see the shares that your connections have engaged with, and then that also pulls it into your feed as well. So that's what you want to try to get going for the content that you will share also. Following prospects and their companies. Yeah, Wendy.
There's a question from Diane. What is the difference between follow and connect?
Yes, so you're following, you can follow companies. You can also follow individuals on LinkedIn. I believe that that has to do, and forgive me, I don't know the exact answer on that, but I think that has to do with their presence on LinkedIn as an influencer, but you can actually follow people just for their content. So say like there's somebody out there that you would love to connect with. So you send them a connection request, but you don't know if they're going to accept it because maybe they are very popular on LinkedIn and they have a huge influencer network. So in that case, you can also then go to their page and choose to just follow them, and that way you'll get access to their content in your feed. But the goal at the end of the day is you really want to get those first party connections going. So when you are sending your follows, and more importantly, when you're sending your connection requests, it's really important to send a message to go along with it. And that message does not have to be what I lovingly refer to as a pitch slap, right? Like that's what you don't want to get. Or that's what you don't want to be sending out. You don't want to send a connection request that then has 3 paragraphs of talking about why your product and all of that. You want to send a request that is genuine, that actually speaks about your intentions with the profile. So a good example of that could be like, hey, so and so would love to connect. And benefit from each other's content. And then you can actually give examples of what you tend to share. Like I typically share content related to XYZ, so hope that can be of value to you. So you're showing them the value of a connection right from the start. So that helps you connect with, again, your prospects and their companies, so that way you can really make sure that they are getting the benefit of your content and you're doing the same. But then you actually have to do it. And we'll talk about some tactics on sharing content in just a moment. But that's what LinkedIn is designed for. It's not designed as a place to sell, and that's what it's become. But you can really stand out in your profile, in your presence, if you always think about with every interaction you have on LinkedIn, what was this platform designed for? It's designed to be a place for people to create and nurture professional connections. And then all of that other noise falls away. And it takes a bit more work because you're creating an organic sort of personality, you're creating an organic brand on LinkedIn. But the more you do it and the more consistency you dedicate to it, the more you will start reaping the benefits of that by more prospect interactions, more potential employer interactions. The more you increase your brand, you may actually start seeing different sort of conversations pop up in your inbox, like those podcast opportunities we were talking about, or even, a next bigger role somewhere else that you hadn't considered yet, that people see in you because of the presence that you have started to create on LinkedIn. We talked about adding connections. That's really important for the SEO part, but then also for building your personal brand. So adding 25 connections per week is just something that kind of like keeps your profile active and keeps that SEO engine humming. And then the more that you are on LinkedIn and engaging with the platform, the more that the algorithm increases your page's visibility. So I always tell my SDRs, like, you should dedicate 1 to 2 hours a week to LinkedIn, to scrolling LinkedIn, because if you've connected with the right people, if you've done it really thoughtfully, you're going to gain a ton of knowledge from all of those shares that are on there. And then the more that you engage with that content, either by just clicking a reaction, or even better, by leaving a comment on the content, the more that that's going to help that algorithm have your profile show up. But again, it's also going to create that network effect where then your comments are going to start to be seen by all the folks that are part of that person that you're commenting on network. It'll also be showcased to your network. And again, you're just building your brand as a subject matter expert. Um, Groups in your ecosystem are really, really important. So LinkedIn groups, very, very slept on, but probably one of the most valuable places when you think again about like what LinkedIn is really, really designed to do, is to be there as a professional resource and a professional network. You can join groups that are solely focused on the things that you care about day in and day out. It was kind of a life-changing experience for me when I started interacting and joining SDR focused groups. I found conferences that were just meant for SDR directors and SDR managers, where it was just days and days of content and like honestly just nerding out with people that cared about all the things that I cared about. We spoke the same language. And I know you have that within your team at your organization, but to kind of branch out and find that in either a LinkedIn group that you can join and then go in person, it really is a kind of a transformational experience and just forces you to up level your game because all of a sudden, you're not the only expert in the room or in the virtual room in this case, but you're all an expert and then you can start just like I said, up leveling each other. So here are just some examples. Like I just did, so I'm obviously not an expert in what you all do. I'm famous at every company I've worked at for saying like SCs and SEs are the smartest people in the room. I can never do what you all do, but hopefully these are some relevant groups for you all. But you can find these just by searching in the LinkedIn search bar, and it can be groups. You just want to use the word group and whatever specialty you're looking for. So that's something that can be really fun to play around with and search what's out there. You can find ones that are just general global groups. You can also find ones that are specific to the area that you're in, and that should give you more opportunities to actually like meet up in person and have those kind of like happy hour experiences and just get yourself more networking opportunities. Just by being in groups like this, you'll get more visibility, and you'll start getting invites that you hadn't previously expected. And it's kind of similar to the podcast, except all of them. If there's something local that is happening in your town or your area that is just for people that care about what you care about, absolutely go to that because you never know what opportunities can arise from that and where that can take you. All right, the final step, social selling. This is not something that comes easily. I know that. I will put that right out there by saying it. If it's something that you haven't been doing regularly, it can feel disingenuous when you start, but it's not. As long as you keep, again, keep the ethos of the platform in mind, keep the idea behind your whole profile. Remember, we talked about when you're setting up your profile, what is my brand? What do I want the focus of this to be? Your content that you're sharing should all kind of be in line with that. And so these are just kind of some tips and tricks on that. So creating a LinkedIn engagement schedule is important. I recommend, and this is like best practice for the SEO, posting about 3 times a week. There are people that post a lot more than that. You are welcome to post daily on your profile, but just be aware every time you're posting, you're showing up in your prospect and everybody in your connecting with ecosystem. So you want to make sure that everything that you're bringing is valuable. And in my experience, I found that when people post daily, the value of those posts tend to diminish. Whereas if you make yourself regular, but not kind of overwhelming, you will tend to get a bit more engagement on the content that you're sharing. And again, engagement is the name of the game, so you can get that flywheel effect going. And then engaging with your connections posts, really, really important. So commenting on them, if they respond, comment again, get a conversation going. You can pull a lot more people in that way. Yes, Wendy.
So another great question. I'm not creative enough to post that much. Where do you get your inspiration for interesting and engaging posts?
Yes, yeah, and I do have a box on this, but I'll spoil the surprise. ChatGPT is your friend. AI is your friend when it comes to creating posts. So AI is great at helping you come up with a content schedule. And even coming up with different types of content that you want to post. And you can even do this on the free versions of ChatGPT. You don't even need the enterprise versions, although if you do have that, you'll get a lot more detail. And if your organization does not have that, like they should, because AI is the future for sure. But my tip for using ChatGPT is to not just tell it what you want, actually ask ChatGPT to write a prompt for you. So an example would be like, write a prompt for me that will result in a LinkedIn posting schedule. I want a variety that will include a variety of content. This is the subject matter that I want it to focus on. And what you'll get from ChatGPT actually as a result is a much more well-developed prompt than you could ever think up in your human brain. And then the resulting response that you will get, which is the actual answer you're looking for, it's not going to take as much back and forth and tweaking to kind of get to the final result. So that you can use it, like I said, to come up with your main content schedule, but then you can also ask for, hey, what's top of mind in this industry today? I need a post. I want it to be snappy. Like what can you offer up to me? So that's one option. That's I think the greatest option that we have today. Prior to AI coming out, I would say if you don't have your own thought leadership to share, find something that you want to amplify. So when you're scrolling through your LinkedIn content for the day, if you find somebody sharing something that you think is great, reshare it with your own thoughts, and then that becomes a post in itself. Resharing without your own thoughts is not going to get kind of the engagement that you're looking for. There is value in it and just kind of like the relevancy of how much is going to come up on your prospects and your connections feeds, but really, focusing on that will help you. Um, all right. So, and then this kind of ties into what I was saying there. When you are posting content, a great rule of thumb is if it feels disingenuous to you, if it feels disingenuous to your brand or to the purpose of your profile, don't post it. Right? Think of something else, even if it means missing your posting schedule for that day. You don't want to have one thing on there that kind of pulls away from everything else. Or, there are other options. You can create a poll, for example. So if you're low on content ideas for that day or that week, it doesn't always have to be you. It doesn't always have to be you kind of like putting out what you personally think. You can be asking for things from your network. So LinkedIn does have other types of post options that you can look into. Polls are great for garnering engagement and also getting conversations started. So those can be fun to do as well. And then a lot of companies have a social content tool. A lot of them don't, but most companies, whether they do or do not have like a main hub for social content sharing, they will have a brand person that is kind of focused on this. So this can be another way to bolster your content. Like if you're feeling low on ideas for that week, going to your company's page and seeing what they're putting out there and resharing that again with your own thoughts. But it really helps to get more of that brand growth going because it's not only what you are focused on, but especially if you're in more of a customer facing motion where there is sales part of it and you're connecting with prospects, you also want to be amplifying your company's messages as well. And then in that same vein, it's really part of everybody's job at the company to repost marketing events or collateral that your company is coming out with. It helps amplify the brand's brand, which in a lot of cases, when you start really getting into the rhythm of social selling, you your brand can actually be more powerful than your company's brand. So that can help their own flywheel effect as well. But also on the flip side, your company's audience is your audience. So when you're resharing the company's content, then you actually gain access to the company's followers, and it'll show that that's a reshare as well. And then if you have access to Sales Navigator, you have InMail, the option to send InMail. If you don't have Sales Navigator, then you can send DMs to your connections only once they've connected. But it's a great best practice. If you're seeing somebody pop up in your feed and you're like, man, that would be a great person for me to connect with, interact with their content first. At the very least, give it a reaction. The like is the easiest, but everything more than that takes just a little bit more effort. So it gets a little bit more SEO, just to be honest with you. But it also gives you a great jumping off point. If you've engaged with it, even better if you've commented on it to then say like, hey, I really loved that post that you put up in your connection request DM. I really love that post. I'd love to connect so that way I can really benefit from all the content that you share and you can benefit from mine. And it starts that much more organic relationship. And then finally, highlighting your team's accomplishments and events is a great way to amplify your team culture. So if you're leading a team, using LinkedIn to shout out the great work that they've been doing is such a huge boost to their morale. And it's also a huge boost to your personal brand as well. So that is something that I don't see done enough. But honestly, in my last round of hiring, I brought in a probably one of the most high potential SDRs that I've hired recently. And he was like, hey, I am looking at a bunch of other companies, but honestly, when I see your LinkedIn content and the way that you focus on your team and the way that the managers that work for you focus on the team, he's like, it makes it kind of a no-brainer at the end of the day that this is a place that I know that I want to be in. Because if you have more entry level roles or roles that are more IC focused, they don't, or individual contributor focused, they don't always get that type of recognition. And LinkedIn is just another platform. And honestly, it's a bigger platform than your company's Slack channel. And it's something that they can then reshare to their network. And then it starts to build into their personal brand. And then you can really see how the LinkedIn flywheel works. So, and then again, sorry, pro tip, ChatGPT is great for helping to create that content. So last thing that I will share here, for those of you that do have access to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you do have something called the Social Selling Index that can help you gauge kind of how you are doing with building your brand and also engaging. So this link here will show you how to get to that in Sales Nav. So basically, it'll give you a score, tell you where you are out of your industry, tell you where you are out of your network, but then also give you examples of how you can improve. So hovering over each one of those will tell you like, hey, what am I missing to establish my professional brand? What am I missing for finding the right people? What am I missing from engaging with insights and building relationships? And then you can work on those specific aspects of your profile, and then that will continue to amplify and really, get your profile in front of the people that you really want it in front of. So that is LinkedIn profile branding and social selling in a nutshell. I know we had some questions throughout, but I'm happy to take any additional questions that may have popped up for you all.
Megan, are you able to post the correct link for the SSI in the chat?
Yes, let
I
me,
tried to grab it. I don't know that I grabbed the right one though.
yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. There's the chat. Okay, and again, that will only work if you have access to LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Very cool. Thank you.
Of course. So great. If there are no questions, I just wanted to put it out there. I love to connect on LinkedIn. I would love to keep this conversation going, especially as you go in and actually start to make these updates and adjustments to your profile. So please, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Put a little note in there. It's a good place to test it out and see if I'll accept it. But please reference this webinar, and I'll be happy to connect with anybody.
That's awesome. Thank you, Megan. This session was so valuable. We really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone. I am really grateful for the Pre-Sales Collective community and on LinkedIn, all the engagement from everyone. So thank you, and thanks, Megan.
Thank you so much.